Have you ever thought why some businesses succeed far more than others, and what makes them so special? Well, in today's tutorial, we're going to explore just that, and we're going to introduce a concept called the flywheel effect. Now, the flywheel effect is a concept that was popularised by Jim Collins in his brilliant book, Good to Great. But what's the background? Well, back in 1996, Jim Collins and his research team wanted to explore a very simple question. And it was this. It was, can a good company become a great company? And if so, how? Now, this is on the back of his earlier research, which looked at what made a great company, which led to another book called Build to Last. Now, in that particular research, his conclusion was that most great companies had exceptional founding figures. The seeds of greatness were kind of sown very early on. But what about the vast majority of businesses who don't have those exceptional leaders, those one-off leaders? How can they go from good to great? Well, this is how it would look in terms of his research question visually. So imagine now we've got two businesses. They both start off good, but not great. And at some point during their journey, the top business has that point of inflection where it'll go from good to great. Its results will improve. Where the bottom business, that bottom organisation, it kind of just plateaus. It just remains good, but not great. So this is the question he wanted to explore. How did it go from good to great? And if so, how? And what he found was a number of key concepts, and the takeaways from it are as relevant then as they are today. And what we're going to do in today's tutorial is explore just one of those concepts, and we're calling it the flywheel effect. If you're looking for more detail on the other concepts, then check out his books, Good to Great, and also Turning the Flywheel Monograph. In his latest book, Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0, Jim Collins reflects on his life's work and research. And he comes to the conclusion that the flywheel is one of the most important strategic principles to come from all his work. So what is it? What is the flywheel effect? Well, it's a key component in terms of what makes a good company go from good to great, and why others don't achieve that. The process kind of resembles pushing a giant, heavy flywheel in the same direction, turn by turn, building that momentum until you achieve breakthrough and beyond. This is how Jim Collins illustrates the flywheel effect in his book. You step forward to focus on those small wins. The small wins accumulate to form visible results. People line up then, engaged and energized by those results. The flywheel builds that momentum, and so the cycle continues, consistent with your values and principles. You keep turning the flywheel until you achieve breakthrough performance, and that's when good to great happens. It's worth emphasizing that you actually need to step forward. It's that step up to step change. You need to focus on those small wins and build that momentum for the long term. And in many ways, that's probably one of the key lessons here in this tutorial. It's that gradual incremental improvement that we're looking for. We're also watching out for this kind of build up before breakthrough. I've put there kind of gradually, then suddenly. Now, if you were to look at the media, what they often report is that overnight success. That's what we read about. That's what we talk about, those overnight successes. But what we don't hear is all the hard work that goes on in the background. And here you can see that gradually, then suddenly. From the outside, they look dramatic, almost revolutionary. But from the inside, these companies feel completely different, more like an organic process. One of the biggest differences between good to great businesses and the rest is leadership. And in fact, Jim Collins devotes a full chapter early in his book to leadership. Good to great leaders, they have this understanding of the importance of consistency and taking action. It's that compound consistency, building up step by step, turn after turn. And that's what generates this momentum. It builds momentum and creates this flywheel effect. Now, something we just need to watch out for, and it's what we call the doom loop. It's what happens when things go wrong. In this simple illustration, we see here that disappointing results are at the top. This leads to a reaction without understanding, which leads to a new direction, program leader, event, fad, or market transaction, which leads to no build-up and no momentum, which in turn leads to disappointing results, and the doom loop continues. I've got here pause for thought. So it's worthwhile thinking about, are you in a flywheel type organisation? Or are you stuck in that doom loop style organisation? What are the signs and how to spot it? So what we'll run through are some examples of flywheel versus doom loop. What are the sort of things you should be looking out for? So first up, your flywheel will focus on those small actions, as opposed to your doom loop is that big corporate change all the time, always looking for that next big thing. Your flywheel will focus on compound consistency that builds up over time, where your doom loop is forever chronically inconsistent. Here we've got disciplined thought versus knee-jerk reactions. I don't know if you can relate to that. And lastly, we've got how a flywheel organisation will spend little time actually motivating or aligning people. They've got people already on board, where your doom loop will spend lots of time trying to motivate people or align people. It's that analogy of having the right people on the bus, and are they in the right seats? And if they are, then you'll have that flywheel effect. So how does the flywheel compare to our EGSP model that we use at 12 Scholars? Well, EGSP stands for excellent, good, satisfactory and poor. Excellent is where we're going, good is what we expect, satisfactory is what we're prepared to accept as a minimum, and poor is what we would consider unacceptable. So how does that relate to good to great? Well, using our EGSP framework, we're just looking at those top two definitions, good to excellent. And everything that Jim Collins talks about in his books and his research in terms of going from good to great, we can exactly apply to good to excellent. So in terms of the flywheel, it's exactly the same as going from good to excellent. So one thing to kind of remember here, good to great or good to excellent is never done. And that's why we need to make excellence our mission. The key points then from this tutorial. It was all about gradually, then suddenly. So think about that flywheel and pushing it turn by turn, step by step will build that momentum, and that will lead to breakthrough performance. Good? Well, it's only relative to what you can achieve next. So no matter where you are now, it's all about how good you want to be in the future. Greatness, well, like excellence, it's inherently a dynamic process. It's not an endpoint, it's not a destination. Remember, we're on a journey. And then lastly here, the moment you think yourself as great, well, that'll be your downfall. Your slide towards mediocrity will have already begun. So some real key takeaways there. And that's it. That's your Tuesday tutorial. We've spoken lots about Jim Collins, his research and his books. We'll put all that information in the notes below. But thanks so much for tuning in. My name's Bob Buckley. This has been your Tuesday tutorial, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.